This shoe looks very unhappy. The screws don't look very good either. We'll get that off, see if I can straighten it up. That screw's loose. These screws, because they've been distorted, the slot's closed up. They've just been very, very stressed. If you look at this shoe, it's anything but flat. So I've got to flatten it this way and then pull the sides in, and it may or may not crack. We may or may not be able to use this one, so I won't know without trying. I've got the shoe here that was taken off an old Codilux meter. It's nice and solid. It's brass, but that's good enough for our purposes. It's made to fit this shoe. So I'll use this to form that shoe back into shape. So we'll need the right tool for the job. That's pretty flat at the base now. Looks okay on the inside. All that mark in the middle where someone's electronic flash with a central contact has marked that. Okay, so I need to close that up. See if I can wind it up in this small vise of mine. It may not work. It's on the limit of this one. No, I've run out of room on my vise. It won't pull that in. I'll try it on the side of the vise. Might be able to pull it in there. Okay. Just close that up. See what it looks like. Well, it's coming back to something that looks like an accessory shoe. Those wings need to fold round more, so I'll pop it back in here and see if I have another go at that. That's looking more like it. We need it to hold this shoe fairly firmly. Still not right. Need to hit that corner at the top. I may have to use a mallet for this. I don't want to use a hammer on these edges. It'll be obvious that I've done it. And we don't want to make any more marks than we have to. So I'll just go away with this. I'm going to strike it on this edge with a hammer. With a mallet rather, the same on the other side, which will have the effect of folding in these wings slightly, because you can see that's quite open. It's not 90 degrees there, it's quite open. We need to fold it over on that edge. Well, that's a nice snug fit there now. It's looking good. This mark that you can see on the top surface, that's actually an indentation. Because if you look at the underside there, you can see the reflection. That's actually humped up here in the middle. Whatever had been put in there with a central contact or screw had been pushed right into that surface. I may be able to bring some of it back, punch that out slightly. But I'm not hopeful that I could make that look completely good again. We'll clean that surface anyway, see what it looks like when it's clean. Let's find some naphtha. Well, it certainly looks better with the dirt and the grease out of that scratched surface, but that mark's never going to disappear completely. That's alright. I mean, most of these cameras, someone has at some stage or another slid an electronic flash with a central contact into the shoe, and typically what you see is a scratch mark running from the back to the centre. This one's a bit more unusual. I don't know what's gone on there, to tell the truth, but it certainly had a hard life. We could tell that the shoe had been stretched completely out of shape, and but now it'll look fine. It'll look fine on that camera, and possibly most importantly, it will grip something it was intended to grip and hold it firmly. Well, it looks a bit better than it used to. Alright, so with the accessory shoe all straightened back up, I'll take this back off. We'll take the glass out of the top cover, clean it up, put it back in, check that our frame counter counts correctly, put the release button, shutter release in there, and button up the top. Well, I'll start cleaning up this top cover. I'll remove the shoe again, so I haven't cleaned underneath it. On the inside, I want to remove this mask here, so I'll unhook the spring for the frame counter. There are 2 screws here. Hold that mask in position. Here's our mask, and here are our 2 windows, which are quite dirty but can be cleaned with just a cotton cloth and some glass cleaner, domestic glass cleaner. The housing I'll just wipe down with a bit of naphtha, get those marks off it. The rear glass element here in the eyepiece, that'll just get cleaned with a cotton bud and some glass cleaner inside and out. These are staked on. You can see 3 stakes at the back there. Do not attempt to unscrew these, it won't go well. Apart from that, there's not much more to say because there's not much to the top covers of these cameras. I'll just clean this top cover up first with a bit of naphtha. I want to see if these dirty marks will go away. They are in the most part. There's a few of those little spots, probably corrosion spots. They feel rough. Right, I'll just swab the rest of it, make sure it's as clean as I can get it. The frame counter here, I'll run over that because they do get grimy. And I'm just working the frame counter from the inside with the lever there to turn it. You often find there's one bad patch, one dirty patch, and that's where the thing has sat for many years, gathering up dust. Which is not something that's going to happen if the camera's spent its life carefully put away in the cupboard doing nothing. And if it's been used frequently, well, the dial will be much the same state all around. That's quite good, and I'll just give it a quick wipe on the inside. Especially around those front windows, because there'll be greasy dirt around there, and when you transfer your clean glass back in there, it will instantly take the opportunity to smear around the edges of the glass. Alright, that's done. The mask can be cleaned. These parts are all quite clean as cameras go. Yeah, shoe, I think I've already cleaned that to within an inch of its life. That's as clean as that's going to come. Alright, so I'm just going to clean this glass. So I use an old cotton handkerchief, domestic glass cleaner to clean those, and a cotton bud to clean this eyepiece one. So I'll do that first. And the inside surface you can do from here, and if you swirl your cotton bud, your Q-tip around, you'll find that you can cover most of that glass, even working through that rectangular aperture. That looks pretty good. Right, handkerchief, I'll clean those, come back, I'll put this together. Okay, I'll try getting this glass back in place. Start with this one. Slide that down into its frame. It's quite firmly held by that bracket. I'll put the bracket on next, which is held in by 2 screws. I don't want those tight because I've got to get the glass in the front yet. Right, so if I pull this frame back, I should be able to lift this glass into place. That's seated in its little tray. I'll hold that far forward as it'll go. Tighten up the 2 screws. That's the 2 front glasses in position. This spring, the hook has to go towards the top of the camera, so down from where we're looking. So I'll get it hooked in it. Let you see what I'm doing here. Get the coil hooked into there. And stretch the spring out and hook it into place on the arm. Bit of fluff there I don't need. Just check that all the dust, there's no dust sitting on that glass, inside or out. No, it looks good. Right, I'll put the shoe back on the top. These screws have all been straightened up somewhat. It doesn't want to start. Let's try one of the other positions. The thread on it might be slightly damaged at the end. It's going in now. Because these screws have been so stressed, effectively the slots close up. And it becomes awkward to get a screwdriver to engage with them. These ones I've straightened out by screwing them into a block. This one, then taking a plain punch and a hammer and hitting the heads of the screws, which effectively flattens them out, returns them to something like what they looked like originally. So there you go, that's that. And that can go back on the camera body now. If we find the body, make sure I've left no fingerprints on the glass. Okay, so that's all in place. See if I need to pop anything else now. I don't. Now I'm holding this button on the back here, I'm sliding it right to the right, my right. That allows me to get it onto here easily. Two screws on the top plate at this end. Knit those up. One on the end at this end. And we want our rewind knob. Rewind knob is 3 pieces. We have the body, this piece at the top with a little indicator on it where you can set your film type. I'm just putting some synthetic grease on that wavy washer. Pop that over it. Using the tool I've got to engage this screw. Run it in. And tighten it up. That can go on the camera. Where's the little shield that goes over the top? It's slightly bent. That means the camera has been dropped at some stage. Let's have a look at that. You can see it's canted over slightly. I'm looking to see if it will scrape there. It's because that screw's bent, that's likely to scrape the top of the camera. So I'll just see if I can straighten that up. I want a rewind shaft that I can put on there. I can see that's got quite a bend on it. You can see that's bent. I'll go and straighten that up. Well, that's much straighter now. That'll be fine. So what I did with that was screw it onto this shaft, which has come from a reflex. It's a solid shaft. Take it out to the shed, place it on a block of wood. I've got a little wooden mallet with a leather face on one side. Just tap the high side until it's squared up. Just light taps. Those screws are chrome brass. They're 3mm I think in diameter, but they'll snap very easily, so don't overdo it. The base of the camera needs to be tidied up. The leatherettes need to go back on. So I'll just scrape old loose adhesive off the back of the leatherette. That'll do nicely. Just fold that over so we don't see that rubbish. I'm going to give it a quick wipe with some naphtha on a cotton bud just to remove any oil or grease that might be on that surface. Now there is a crack in the leatherette at this point. That's where the trim here had been punched up through it. But that'll probably disappear when it goes back on the camera. Let's remove this advance lever. Now of course this has all been cleaned at least once, but it's been handled a lot since then. A lot of grease has been about, so I want this grease free. That's fine. And now some adhesive onto the leatherette. Okay, let's get some adhesive on here. If it was a small piece of leatherette, your best bet is to apply the adhesive to a piece of paper and transfer it to the leatherette on a toothpick. This is a large piece and I want to get it done quickly before it all dries. I'm doing it like this. That should do. Let's get that on the body. Taking my leatherette, just make sure that the holes in it completely clogged. Pop that into place. And take care around bosses like this and here, this one, because leatherettes tend to shrink over time. You'll need to work at it sometimes to make sure that they fit neatly around raised bosses. This is looking quite good. You can see the shadow here where that chrome plate had been pushed up through it, but that's not going to cause us any problems. Let's have a look at this film advance. Have we said anywhere funny? No, it looks like we're good. Let's get the lever in place. And we have a leatherette patch for the lever, which I'll just scrape. They often have 3 bumps of adhesive on them where they sat in the screw heads. So it's worthwhile scraping them, otherwise you'll end up with 3 bumps on your leatherette once it's stuck there. With a little patch like this, I shouldn't probably be transferring the adhesive on a toothpick, but I ain't. Now the leatherette does have a grain. You might just as well make sure that the grain of the patch lines up with the grain of the body, because that costs you nothing. And that only leaves me with the back catch cover. There are 2 tiny screws which were here. I thought originally one of them was missing, but I was wrong. Okay, assembling this catch. Start with the cover, put the catch in place, put a screw up through the catch on the long side. There's 2 slots in there. This is the longer of the 2. It's got a little tab at the end to catch the spring. Push the spring into position and with luck it'll stay there. That didn't stay there. It didn't stay there because the spring is a little bit flat and a little bit compressed. I'll stretch it out just slightly, because if you overdo it, it's as bad as not having done it at all. Start again. Screw up through there, put this in place, hook the spring into place. Now it's fallen out again. I'm holding it sideways. I'm going to lower it into place. Check that it moves freely. It seems to. And do that screw up very gently. Because if the spring's not sitting correctly, it will mutilate the spring. And then the action won't work. That's working nicely, which means that I didn't make a mess of it. It's important, if you feel any reluctance of that spring when you're getting it back on there, to stop and do the job again. Otherwise you run the danger of ruining that spring. Alright, so let's get this. Tighten down. Here's our back catch cover. So our leatherette's in place. Film advance working. Camera opens and closes. The frame counter counts one exposure each time, and the indices is in the middle of the notch, so that's good. So that's the camera body dealt to. Next task, dealing with the shutter.